So Mercedes have changed tact, completely 180 on their design philosophy, super conservative. No longer is it the peaky performance curve that Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton fans have had to endure and be patient with for the past 24 months. No longer is it porpoising, and no longer is it zero pods. Rejoice, say Lewis Hamilton fans and Mercedes fans globally. However, that's not to say that it's going to be good. That's not to say that it's going to be good enough to challenge a resplendent Max Verstappen in a dominant Red Bull. For their design philosophy, they've gone meat and potatoes across the board, all except for that very sexy, polemic front wing design. And bravo to Mercedes, for the first time in 24 months, they've leveraged a genius innovation, one that they can leverage towards the upside of performance as opposed to the downside. The ingenuity of Mercedes' front wing is the plane at the back. Right, people are calling it a 3.1. Although it does meet regulations, it also leverages something called the Y250 vortices, which is very clever in the way it manages the dirty air that the front tyres produces outboard, away from the all-important wing beam and floor. Y250 vortices is something that front wings on previous era of cars used to leverage. They've done something very clever to make it compliant, apparently, because related parties on this matter disagree. You talk to the rest of the teams and they're lodging complaints. But Ted Kravitz spoke to Toto Wolff yesterday at the first testing session of the 24 season, and Toto Wolff said that they developed it alongside the FIA at each and every step to make sure that it was compliant. Slam dunk then, you might say, open and shut case. Johnson, why are we even talking about it? Because the legend that is Ted Kravitz has gone on and he's had another conversation in one Pat Symonds, the technical chief of the FIA, a legend in his own right and a proper F1 bod, a genius, some might say. This fella used to work for Williams and designed some of the most innovative concepts that we've seen to date. And this conversation goes a bit differently from the one that Toto alluded to, you know, the one that Mercedes had with the FIA to make sure in real time that this front wing was legal. Because for whatever Pat says in his first stanza about the wing being legal, affirming Toto's conversation, he flies in the face of that with his second, saying it's not within the spirit of the rules. What does that even mean? Well, cast your mind back to 2021. Boffins, Brawn and Symonds rubbed their heads together with a view to improve racing. Now, we know during that era, during the turbo hybrid era of the late 10s, that cars struggled to follow each other, dramatically reducing good battles on track and the extent to which we saw overtaking. Fans did not like this. And so the whole scope of the rule change in 2022 was to ensure that the sticky on bits on the car didn't manufacture dirty air, that cars could follow closer, that we would get more overtakes and so better racing. That, in essence, is the spirit of the rules. But this is where it gets a bit techie, because if you're invoking terms like spirit of the rules, you're asking F1 teams not to F1, because the foundation, the very thing that F1 is built upon, is innovation, bending/breaking rules. Lest we forget, it was the legend himself, Ross Brawn, that said that we read the rules not to see what they say, but to understand what they don't say, so we can weaponize that, leverage it for gains. Allow me to counter you then, Pat Symonds, that throughout all of F1 history, the one common denominator, the one common thread has been innovation. If you're not cheating, then you're not trying, some may say, and that phrase has been no more apropos than when talking about Formula One. Don't believe me, but let me put you on some game. You remember the Gordon Murray designed Brabham fan car that so effectively leveraged what the rules didn't say to access additional downforce? You remember the tuned mass damper of the 05-06 Alonso Renault car, traction control potentially too? Not to mention the god tier Adrian Newey designed Williams that leveraged active suspension in 92 and 93. Nigel Mansell and Prost will thank him for that. It's remiss of me to not mention the blown diffuser of Sebastian Vettel's era that propelled him to 4 championships as near as makes no difference. There's a F-duct and dual access steering from Mercedes, not to forget party mode. You've got McLaren's third brake pedal that was so brilliant at managing understeer. Mercedes F-duct and dual access steering, lest we forget. Tyrrell's 6-wheeler, oh indeed, F1 wouldn't be F1 without these fringe line-stepping innovations. So I say all that to say this: I don't know why you would even bring that up, Pat Symonds. Within the spirit of the rules, why is it incumbent upon Mercedes to ensure that their designs, whilst within the rules, are also within the spirit of the rules? That makes no sense. Don't hate the player, Matt Symonds. Hate the game. Ergo, design and rewrite better rules. The FIA have had a history, especially over the past 5 years, for being consistently inconsistent. Read their rules and regs, particularly the Sporting Code of Conduct, and you will see they read as if a 5-year-old has written them. In them, you will see no terms and definitions, so that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, teams and fans alike. You remember in season 2 years ago, they were meant to have carried forward some adjustments to the regs, but they failed to copy and paste. What's that about? The ink hasn't even dried yet on Michael Massey's NDA for us to be talking about the spirit of the rules. Surely FIA, Pat Symonds et al. Rewrite the rules in the way that you intended them to be read. The reason for being for these teams is to find lap time, fundamentally opposed to the remit of the FIA. Design rules, implement them, institute them consistently, ensure that all the participants are safe, and ensure that the competitive landscape is fair. Spirit of the regulations. I can't even believe that came out of Pat Symonds' mouth. What are we talking about here?